But first today, of course, and I've gone through it, the apology from Jacinta Allen to Victorian Aboriginal people was one of the agreements that was made under the treaty process. And it also follows earlier apologies. Of course, there was the one from Kevin Rudd in 2008 and more from Victorian Labor premiers. And the first one, of course, was Jess Kennett's apology back in 1997. What's the legal status of all of this? Joining me now, the Australian's Legal Affairs contributor, Ms Merritt. Well, we know these apologies are largely symbolic, but we know the treaties are not. We find out today there's $100 million settlements that were partly negotiated during the treaty process. Victorians didn't vote for a treaty. In fact, they voted against the voice and anything that looks and sounds like the voice, but they're copying it anyway here. Chris, what are the legal ramifications from here on in? Because with this new Aboriginal body in Victoria, every piece of legislation before the Parliament gets considered by the two houses in the usual way. But if it's Aboriginal related, and everything will be, it'll go to a separate Aboriginal chamber of the Parliament.
Well, the implications, in my view, of the treaty and the arrangement you've just outlined are all bad. For this reason, it puts a full stop to the doctrine of civic equality. And why is that bad? Because it reverses the historic direction of reform in Aboriginal affairs. We moved away from race-based preferences and towards ever-increasing perfection of the concept of civic equality, equality before the law. That's the great victory of the referendum of a couple of years ago. It was a resounding success for the principle of civic equality, that we are all citizens of equal status in one country with one sovereignty. By signing this treaty and establishing a different civic status for Indigenous Victorians, it marks a reversal. It heads Victoria back towards those dark days of racial preference and civic inequality. And that can only erode public confidence in the democratic state that we've built in this continent over the last 200 years. You can see that in the address, the apology. It was completely unbalanced. Yes, terrible things happened in the past, but they happened to all sorts of people. Anybody who's got antecedents, who arrived in chains on a convict ship and has looked into what happened to them, would accept that. There were terrible things done to all sorts of people. But we've moved on from that. We've got responsible government, we've got equality of citizenship, we've got a country now that's the envy of many, and we've got people queued up to try and join us. The last thing we want to do is turn around and go back to the dark days of the past when race was a determinant of how you stood in society.
I make the point that Jacinta Price has herself done so eloquently. It would be very hard to find an Aboriginal Australian today, someone who identifies as being Aboriginal, that wouldn't have other race blood in them. That's just the nature of our settlement. And it's sort of pitting one of your ancestors against another. And it's as though it creates, I guess, a preference for one part of your DNA over another, even if to yourself there has been nothing done, or even to your parents' parents. We're going back 2 centuries to try and deal with grievances in the modern world.
Look, it's the antithesis of what the people of Australia voted for a couple of years ago. It's the antithesis of a fair go. Race is irrelevant. It's how you conduct yourself. Governments and political parties can try and take a rise out of this by emphasising race, but the reality is Australians greet each other as they find them. Race is not the determinant of how you treat your fellow citizen. It's how they conduct themselves. It's just backwards.